Go.
Hi, my name is Daniel Boyd. I'm an artist and I currently live in Sydney. I grew up in Cairns and I guess that's about it.
Okay. And my name's William, and I'm just going to be interviewing Dan with a couple of questions. So, my first question is: have you always wanted to be an artist, and what is it about art that interests you?
I guess growing up, I always had a passion for some form of art. Maybe when I was when I was about 11 or 12, I kind of found it was something that I really engaged with. So I had an interest in it, and it was I guess it just kind of went from there. I had a passion for reproducing like comic book figures. I was really into comics, and so I was really interested in figurative work. So I'd make drawings of it's kind of like Spider-Man and the X-Men and all that kind of the Marvel comics. But I also had interest in like Conan the Barbarian. So it was like it's kind of like figurative. It was about representation of the figure. So I started looking at Renaissance imagery, and then I guess it was something that I just kind of I felt comfortable with, and it was it kind of came easy to me. So I just kind of went with it. It wasn't like something that I decided one day that I wanted to do. I was always doing it. I was always making art. So that's kind of how I came to art.
Yep. And what techniques do you prefer to use in crafting your art?
I guess primarily a painter, and I do have other areas that I use to get an idea across. It just kind of depends what works best for a certain idea that I have. I work with video work as well as painting, and I also installation as well is kind of a part of my practice. So I guess my style of painting has kind of evolved since I left art school. The first kind of work I made when I left, or while I was at university at art school, was kind of looking at the I guess the weight of historical painting and in relationship to Australia. So the representation of icons of colonialism in Australia, and reassessing that is to introduce a alternate understanding of what these figures meant to myself, but also other people who didn't necessarily take the same understanding of what these kind of paintings more commonly represent. So I was looking at Captain Cook and King George III, who was the monarch at the time. Cook's time in Australia, Joseph Banks, and also Governor Phillip. So just, you know, these quite important icons to what we are taught is the kind of beginning of history in Australia. So like a predominant this kind of and how people engage with those figures or those icons of colonialism. So what they mean to contemporary Australian society, and how we look at these figures, and how we're taught what these figures mean to contemporary understanding of our country. So what I was doing was introducing an Indigenous perspective and kind of shifting that to add another level to that image. Basically, I with that first body of work, it was like a satirical take on Australian history, and I kind of introduced. The title of that series was the No Beard series. So I was kind of looking at the similarities between the British establishing their colony in Australia and piracy. So just there's that kind of the link between the two, and so it was like it was quite obvious, you know, the reference to Blackbeard, but it was also about the kind of the masculinity that these kind of like icons, you know, Captain Cook, what they become, and so when you think about representation of these people, No Beard is a reference to when Cook landed in Botany Bay, and the local Indigenous people, they thought that he was a woman because he had no beard. So it was about kind of emasculating him, you know, like taking that all of that associated I guess when something is kind of magnified too much, and sorry, what I'm trying to say is when something becomes as large as Cook in Australian context, it's quite easy for elements of that to become for a myth to be created. So we have to be careful when we present an idea of the history of this country, and acknowledge what has come before Cook landing at Botany Bay. So it's important for contemporary society to engage with ideas that are quite important to the social construction of Australia, and acknowledge the the other voices and allow them to be heard. So yeah. Sorry, that's kind of like rambling all over the place, but
Yeah, that's fine. And my third question is a work routine important in your practice, or?
Yeah, I guess I do like to stretch my own canvases, and it kind of allows me to get into a certain headspace. Other artists like to. I mean, I do it also sometimes. If I'm doing a drawing, or a painting, I like to, I guess, loosen up my arm. Get it warmed up, and it could be as simple as just kind of getting a piece of charcoal and a big piece of paper and just moving your arm around and doing circles and stuff like that, just to get your hand-eye in, and it helps with your control of your brush stroke, and also with drawing, it helps with that as well. So there's I guess there's certain parts to it, but yeah, the stretching of the canvas kind of helps me to get into a certain headspace and think about the work, and kind of except it eases me into it as well. So yeah.
But you don't sort of like have sort of like a schedule, like I'm gonna paint from this time to that time or something. It's just you do these things just before you start, but you don't really like sort of plan your day or something like that.
No, I try to keep a kind of structure to my working hours. Once you're familiar with your with your kind of art practice, it just I mean, if you work all the time, it's not. I mean, for I guess to be a professional artist, you have to not wait for inspiration to create a work. I always think about works that will come after something that I'm working on, like as I'm working on an image or a painting. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking about where this is going to lead next, or if I'm working on an exhibition, like a solo show, I'll have a group of reference material, and I'll kind of work from there, so that there's a certain structure to it. But I guess I kind of just follow on from one work to the next, and I try to fit that into my schedule, I guess. Yeah, so I do keep a kind of a structure to it. So.
Yeah. And you've been referred to as a guerrilla artist or a protest artist. Do you see yourself in this sort of way, or?
No, I guess that's when people use those kind of comments. It's, I guess, being an Indigenous person in Australia, anything that you make will be political artwork. I mean, I guess it's the context which I exist is is always going to come back to this idea of me being a guerrilla artist or a political artist. It's not. I could paint a picture of a flower, and someone could find something in that like some symbolism or something that would make me a political artist. I mean, the early works were definitely had a certain view that wasn't in line with the
normal.
Yeah, the majority of because just being a minority in this country is and having a say, it kind of immediately makes you a political
Yeah.
So there's no kind of way around that.
And also, many of your recent paintings, you've used a dot style. What inspired you to work like this, and is there sort of like an underlying meaning to this, or?
Yeah, the style kind of it was kind of referencing this idea of so the dots are transparent, so they kind of act as a lens, and it kind of relates to perception and multiple kind of points of view or perspectives. The lens is kind of like a reference to like a cultural lens, or how many individuals make up a concept or an idea. Everyone has an understanding of something, and they all come together to create something. So it's kind of a reference to pluralism in a way. So many understandings, or allowing all these different understandings to come through the surface of the works, and they also the dots are kind of a reference to a German school of psychology, referencing called it the Gestalt school, and kind of links into perception, and the dots kind of so all the paintings have a black surface that so in between the dots there's this black space, and the idea of the Gestalt kind of theory or laws. There's a certain one of the laws is called the law of closure, and if you think about I guess it's like a series of dashes, broken line, like a series of dashes that are in the shape of the square, and so our mind, we perceive it as a square, but it's not really a square because it's not a complete line. There's kind of breaks in that line, or a circle, for example. If there's a series of dashes in that circle, then if there's a series of dashes that are in the shape of a circle, we perceive it as a circle straight away. It's like an automatic thing. So with the surface of my works, there's the surface is broken up into these little dots, and inside those dots are all these marks and colors, and individually they're quite abstract. So if you looked at it at a single dot, it wouldn't mean much. It would be a mark on a canvas. But as a whole, it creates an image, and it's kind of about the acknowledging that the within a representation of maybe like a photograph or a painting, it's acknowledging that representation cannot hold everything that's represented there in a way. So you say there's like a landscape that I reference in a painting, and in that landscape, depending on where that landscape is, there are all these other elements to it that we'll never fully understand. It's just it's a representation of that, and I've also kind of looked at objects. For example, I've looked at objects in museums, and particularly objects from the Pacific, and when you take an object from one context and then place it in a museum context, it's understood differently. So it's perceived differently, and that the movement of that object from its original context creates this kind of this shift in the understanding of it, and so you lose a lot of information that's attached to that. So my works are about acknowledging all of that, which is a part of it that we don't know. So it kind of allows all these kind of unknown elements of something to become a part of it again. So it's my works are making that visible in a way. It's yeah. Does that make sense?
So it's like the blackness in between the dots is like representing the things that we don't know about the image. Is that?
Yeah, or even our our existence in a way. So I've made video works that reference the universe and dark matter, and the kind of expanse of time, and so it's about not knowing how we ended up here. It's about that, acknowledging that there's a lot that we don't know about how we got to this point, and that's kind of like the underlying theme, the underlying theme or concept that kind of grounds the work. It's about not being able to comprehend our past, not being able to comprehend our future. So yeah, it's some big questions, but yeah, it's kind of the idea.
Yeah. And as you've mentioned before, you've used many different mediums and styles of like painting and sculpture and video installations. Is there like a preferred way of making your art, or just sort of?
Not necessarily. Yeah, it's just kind of whatever works with the situation. I just kind of go with it. It allows me. It kind of makes it exciting for me as well. You know, it's it keeps me. It kind of allows me to challenge myself continually, and yeah. I mean, there's like with painting, you know, it's kind of it's one of those things where you're always learning, like you know, even just mixing colors or the way that you put the brush on the canvas can change like so dramatically, and it's yeah, it's kind of about challenging yourself. So yeah, that's where I'm kind of at. I mean I do make a lot of paintings, but I guess yeah, that the paint the kind of yeah, the ideas lend themselves to become paintings, so that's kind of how I end up there.
And for your recent work, you've examined your family history in Vanuatu. Yeah, Vanuatu. Sorry, I just went completely blank then and couldn't read. And North Queensland. What is it that interests you about this subject?
I don't know a lot about my family history, so my ancestry. It goes to a certain point, and my family were a part of the stolen generation. My great grandfather was a slave from Vanuatu, so when he came from Vanuatu, he was given a European name, and so his name became Samuel Pentecost because he came from Pentecost Island, and I don't know anything. I don't know his name before that. I don't know. I don't have a link to any cultural kind of any cultural practices from Pentecost Island, because I don't know where he's from exactly on Pentecost Island. It's quite a diverse, like quite a culturally diverse place. Vanuatu. It's got the most different languages per capita in the world, and so it's that kind of is also evident in the way that my indigenous Australian cultural inheritance was kind of seized with the stolen generation. So any form of cultural practice was not allowed by the church and the state, and so it's about trying to make a connection with that again. It's quite important to me, and it's important to a lot of Indigenous people in Australia, because there's a lot of problems that have come from that, and yeah, I guess it's just acknowledging that.
And my final question: what challenges are there working as a living artist? Like, For my final question, what challenges are there working as a living artist? Like,
what challenges as a living artist
uh,
opposed to a dead one?
as a professional artist, my dad wrote that, and
That's good.
it was meant to be professional.
Yeah. It's what are the challenges? I mean, it's not an easy profession to be a part of. You know, it is quite a challenging one. I think if you have a passion, for making art, then it's easy to make art for a living. You do need a lot of support. Art's also considered, I guess, a luxury item or something. You know, it's kind of when the economy isn't going too well.
Sort of gets the chopping block.
Yeah, art's one of those things that that isn't seen as important as other things here in Australia. So I think you know, we do need a shift in ideologies that relate to art in Australia, and hopefully, I mean, the government can kind of see the importance of art in relation to culture in Australia, and it's there is a lot being done, and but it's yeah, it would be nice to see more importance placed on art in Australia.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me interview you.
You're welcome.